I have Ralph on my laptop background at work.
Yeah.
And a coworker came into my office and he said, like, oh my God, like your dog is so cute. Like he has all this like loose skin. And then he said, do you ever have hair on you? Because he's like, when you're at work, like your clothes, like you never have hair on you.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, because I change and then I try to not touch my dog before I go to work.
Yeah.
And I have this like sticky roll in my office.
Yeah.
But I said, let me show you my boots. So I have these like higher boots that go up to your knees. And I just open them up and they're just full of hair. Because when I put them on, like my socks just drag along the inside. And he
Yeah.
was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. There it is. There it is.
Welcome to Let's Boop Snoots.
I'm Heidi.
And I'm Vero.
And today we are going to talk e-collars.
E-collars.
E-collars. What is an e-collar?
Qu'est-ce que c'est?
Qu'est-ce que c'est? E-collar. Before we start into the e-collars, shall we
Do
have
you
a
have
quick
a story?
I have a quick touch point on It's an inside joke, peeps. Sorry about that. But well, one thing I just wanted to mention really quickly, I was talking to Vero earlier about this. If you didn't tune in last week, we kicked the year off with a super depressing episode on death and dying with our doggos because unfortunately I lost my precious Becky over the holidays, my hound dog, to
Yeah.
a bladder tumor that obstructed her. So we talked about like the process of that and the things to look out for and the things to recognize in your dogs and like the hardships involved in these little creatures that steal our hearts and leave this world and all the downers of the animal ownership. But I was telling Vero today that people like you grieve in different ways and it stays with you a little bit. So I told Vero about how this weekend I was taking the opportunity because I'm doing some extra schooling on the side on top of my work and to clean my house up, and I was vacuuming the couches and I felt like I was vacuuming like the last like memories of Becky off of the couch and got super emotional, and my husband came in and was like, what's wrong? And I was like I'm like it's the last of Becky. I'm like, I feel like I'm erasing her memory, and he was like, oh God.
Aw.
And like the two of us got a bit emotional, so you never know when it's going to hit you. And
Yeah.
I remember the last time with our last dog, Officer Scraps, who passed away, that, we had to put him down. We went through the whole rigmarole of that and everything. And it had been like several weeks, like later, we were, recouping from it, moving on with life and so on and so forth. And my husband and I had gone on a date night together, and we stopped at the mailbox on the way home, and the vet had mailed us a paw print of his. And then the two of us started crying at the mailbox together. So you never know how or when it's going to hit you, but we all grieve our doggos at different times in different ways, and that's okay.
It took me forever to put Wiggum's crate away, like take it
Yes.
apart and put it away after he
Mm-hmm.
passed away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My son, even with Mr. Scrappy, like when he passed away, kept Scrappy's collar in his room and his water bowl for like months because
Oh,
he didn't want to put it away. So I was like, yeah, okay. I'm like, you hang on to that, buddy.
it was really weird, like after I lost Wiggum, because everything was just so quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, because my socks would always be full of hair
Yeah.
and they would be dirty. And if it was like summer, my feet would be dirty.
Yeah.
And I remember after he like passed away, I had to clean my floors because Wiggum, right before he passed away, I came home from work and he had like urinated
Mm-hmm.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So I cleaned my floors like very, very well afterwards. And I remember like my socks just never being full of hair and my socks just never being dirty.
Yeah.
and having to clean my floors like once every like, I don't know, couple of
2
weeks
weeks
instead of
rather than
almost
1.
every day.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it
And
was so weird.
it is weird, and it's funny because even, like, after, like, we had to put Becky down on, New Year's Eve, and, so, we're a few weeks past that now, and even my son was saying the other night that he was in his room, and he heard, like, Becky jump off his bed because whenever he'd play on his computer, she'd come in and sleep on his bed and, like, come and go sort of thing. So he was telling us that he was weirded out because he thought he heard a dog jump off his bed and stuff like that. And I said, that's just your brain, like, processing, like, Becky being gone. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, I used to, like, think that, like, you saw a dog in the corner of your eye, or it's just certain sounds and stuff like that that you get accustomed to that are still sort of like there.
Yeah.
And we tried explaining that to him, but he was like, no, like, he's like, it's funny because, like, she would sleep in his room, like, every day while he was on his computer. So he's like, still hears the sound of her getting on and off of the bed, which is like,
Oh,
oh, poor guy, eh?
yeah.
Anyways, I just wanted to talk about that one last time, but y'all's.
Well, speaking of hairy socks,
Mm-hmm.
I have Ralph on
Mm-hmm.
my laptop background at work.
Yeah.
And a coworker came into my office and he said like, "Oh my god, like your dog is so cute." Like he has all this like loose skin. And then he said, "Do you ever have hair on you?" Cuz he's like, "When you're at work, like your clothes, like you never have hair on you."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, cuz I change and then I try to not touch my dog before I go to work."
Yeah.
And I have this like sticky roll in my office.
Yeah.
But I said, "Let me show you my boots." So I have these like higher boots that go up to your knees, and I just open them up and they're just full of hair because when I put them on, like my socks just drag along the inside. And he
Yeah.
was like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah. There it is. There it is. That's so funny. Yeah, so there's hair over everything, and we're noticing already too, like, after Becky being gone as well, because she had like long, sort of like white and like orange fur, so you could sort of see it on everything, like the couches, the floors. There's like, you get, those little cloud balls of fur like in the corners of your
Mhm.
hallways and every room that you're in, and that sort of thing. And with Gibbon, because he's a Weimaraner and he's got like the gray, very short hair, you don't he still sheds, and you can still see it, like his hair when we sweep the floors. You can definitely tell that there's a bunch of Gibbon hair, but it's not the same as Becky. It's not as noticeable as Becky. Like,
No.
Gibbon's fur ain't making floor clouds. Like,
Oh yeah.
y-
Ralph's fur is just everywhere.
yeah.
Like it's not just little clouds in the corner, it's like little clouds in the middle of the room.
Y'all's,
Yeah,
y'all's
and they keep your feet warm. Like you have socks on and then you just walk around and they just like it's like
extra coat,
extra coat and on your socks.
hairy feet, hobbit feet, hobbit feet,
Feets.
feet,
Foots.
footsie
Feets.
feet. Y'all's.
So we're going to talk about some e-collars.
E-collars. So you recently bought one, correct?
Yes, I bought the mini educator collar for Ralph
Mm-hmm.
and we're still doing some training with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got the mini educator. Um, I was super excited about this. And I got the e-collar in the mail. I read the instruction books, set the e-collar up, put the e-collar on Ralph, and then I started because you have to figure out which intensity he reacts to.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of like a funny but horrible story as well. So I start at 1. I did it on myself first, and I could feel it at 4.
See, I'm amazed that you could feel it at 4. So for everybody who doesn't know what an e-collar is, it's sort of like this pronged collar that you fit tightly around the dog's neck, and it has like these two sort of prongs that you need to have contact on the skin with, and it's a tens machine. So it's delivering like a low, like, well, anywhere from super low to super high, like electrical sort of like electricity, like a delivery of like a little bit of electricity.
It's like you could see the contraction.
Yeah, you can. So, the this company that we're talking about, because Vero has the same one as mine, and they are a very, very good company. And I think it's just called the e-collar, and they have like the educator, mini educator. They have different models and sizes and different ranges. And so basically, there's the collar that goes on the dog, and then the owner or the dog handler that has the remote control piece. So on the remote control piece, it goes from 0 to 100 and delivers a shock like everywhere in between. So um, when like same thing when I got mine for we trained Becky on it because Becky would take off for like super far and super long at the cottage and her recall wasn't that great. And so we decided to e-collar train her because it was becoming problematic, like with neighbors and stuff at the cottage and with my dad, because like he would want to leave the cottage and she would take off for like 45 minutes and there's no getting her back. So we decided to e-collar train her. And it's a nice tool to use. The people who believe in the pure positive training aren't huge believers in it because they feel like it's cruel. But honestly, like you can put it on yourself, like Vero mentioned, and she could feel it at 4. And I could only start feeling it at around like 10.
Oh, really?
And do you want to know what's funny is my dad has like these big, like German, like it's like a pack of Johnsonville brats like hands. With like tough skin because like he's always working with his hands and mechanic and he's like constantly doing jobs and stuff like this. He's just like this little stocky like German dude. And I can remember he's like, what is this thing? And like I thought, I don't know if I like this. And and I was like, Dad, I'm like, here, I'll show you. And like I put it on him and I turned it up to like, I'm not kidding you, 15, and my dad could not feel it. It's like, oh my God. So it varies between human and it varies very
Yeah.
a lot between dogs. But
I did it on my forearm though.
yeah, like I did on the wrist, like where you test like for
Oh,
baby
okay.
bottles. Like
Okay.
honest to God. Like so yeah, if you put it like on your fingers, like obviously it's gonna be different. And like it's if you really want, you can push it up to your neck because that's where you're kind of putting it on your dog, right? Is like around them,
Mhm.
which is a sensitive spot. But the whole idea around it is that you need to find out like at what level your dog starts to feel it with no distractions whatsoever, and then you start like finding out what your working levels are indoors, and then obviously they're higher outdoors because obviously just like when you're distracted by something you won't necessarily feel something like scratching or itching like at your skin, right? Like it's that sort of idea. But anyways, I just wanted to give a quick brief like overview of the e-collar just so people got an idea of what we're dealing with, and we can get into a little bit about the training like later. But I sorry to
Yes.
interrupt, Vero.
No, that's okay. I
So
think
you
it's good that you gave a description of what it was.
so you could feel it only at 4 on yourself,
I can
eh?
feel it at 4.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it on Ralph and I started at 1 and then kept going up and no reaction, and I kept going up and I swear, Heidi, I was up to like 30 and then I was up to 40 and he was just like sitting there looking at me and I could see his skin contract.
Yeah,
So I know it's working,
yeah, it's delivering.
but
Yeah.
he's just looking at me.
Mhm.
No flinching, no ear movement. And then I was like I was like, what am I doing wrong? So we recharged it just to make sure. Well, obviously it was working because I could see it, physically see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he just like did not care at all about it.
and and it's tough because like what people tend to compare this collar to is like a shock collar, right? And the thing with like other standard shock collars, which are much cheaper, like this is like a pretty uh intricate like piece of equipment that you're working with, and it's
Mm-hmm.
expensive. Like so they start at like around like 250, $300 depending on which model you're buying.
Yeah.
And and there's it's very complex, like learning how to use it and when to use it and when to, like, because it's like a wireless leash is essentially what it is. So you don't have that feedback that you would if you were working with like a prong collar or a slip lead,
Mhm.
where you know the dog's pulling and you can give a quick pop, or you can, you know, they're pulling on it and they adjust to it right away because you know that they're feeling it. You don't know what they're feeling, and it's the same thing. So there was the one day where I thought, well, maybe like because Becky started to get really good like with the e-collar, and we could even like not put the e-collar on her, and if I said Becky here, like she would come over even if she wasn't wearing it. And so I was like, maybe I should start testing Gibbs on it, because he was sort of pushing his boundaries with us, like going to the park and stuff like that. So same thing. So when you first start, like almost every training video, and when you buy this thing, by all means go on YouTube. There's a whole list of like e-collar training videos of how to start out, what to do with it, different exercises once you start getting better and finding your working levels with your dog. But a friend of mine who we've mentioned on the show several times, Mish, I always call her Mish,
Mish.
Mish, um, did Becky's e-collar training for me. So I remember her describing it to me, and so you start by just getting the dog comfortable wearing the collar. So you let them sniff it. You like, good job. You put it on, and you just get them comfortable wearing the collar. Then once they're
Mhm.
comfortable wearing the collar, you wait for them to lay down for a nap, or to just laying down, like chilling out, where they're not distracted at all. They're like literally in relaxo mode. That now you start the remote, and you start at like I would say 2 or 3 depending on the size of your dog. And you start, there's 2 buttons on it. So there's one button that you push where it when you push it, it just delivers one quick like shot of electricity. And it goes from, like I said, 0 to 100. 100 is like the equivalent of a shock collar, though, and those are the cheaper ones I was talking about earlier, where it's like you push a button and it delivers a large and intense shock to the point where the dog like yelps, right? The e-collar, you have,
Unless you're Ralph.
yeah, yeah, that's unless you're Ralph.
Unless you're Ralph.
But the e-collar, you can go from 0 to 100. 100 would be the equivalent of a shock collar, where you're delivering a large shock, and they only recommend using that in life or death situations. So, like dog fights, running out into a street, eating something that you know is going to be harmful to them. You deliver, like you crank it up. It has a dial on it. You crank it right up to 100, and you deliver a shock to them so that they listen to you. But when you're first starting out, you want to start at like 2 or 3. And again, like Vero could feel it at 4. I couldn't feel it until like 10. And it just feels like a little buzz, like again, like it's
Yeah.
like a little irritation. So it's not like when I say when you say the word electricity, again, people think the worst. They think of that huge shock, like you're getting zapped, like like a thunderbolt of lightning. Um, but it's not like on this thing. It's like a little like annoying sort of tickle, and that's what you sort of
Yeah.
want. It's
It's like an
it's
itch.
it's like an itch, and you can tell it irritates them, and that's you want to get it to the point where it just slightly irritates them, so that when they're doing something bad and you want them to do not to do it anymore, you push it, because that's like, hey, listen to me, remember? And they associate whatever the your commands are with that feeling, knowing that once they obey the command, that uncomfortable feeling goes away. Just like when we talked about leash training and pressure,
Mhm.
like with a prong or a slip lead or whatever, you're giving them an uncomfortable feeling, and once they execute what you want them to do, the uncomfortable feeling goes away, and there you have an obedient dog.
Yes.
So you
So
wait to, yeah, sorry Vero, go ahead.
no, that's okay. So we decided to replug it just to make sure it was completely charged. And then the next day we put it back on a little bit tighter. I don't think I put it on tight enough.
Mhm.
And we just let Ralph kind of walk around with it for a little bit.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and then we tried from 1, and then at 10 was kind of like where he reacted,
Mhm.
where he was just like, ooh,
But
like what was that?
and what kind of reaction was it? And what was he doing when, and again, so there's 2 buttons on it. There's one where you push it once and it delivers it gives one delivery, but there's another one that
Mm-hmm.
you hold down, and it is, as long as you are pushing the button down, it is delivering the thing, so that you can hold that in place until, so let's say you want your dog to sit, so you would say, Ralph, sit, and then you push and hold that button until his bum's on the floor, and then you take the you release the button, so it removes that uncomfortable feeling on the
Yeah.
collar.
I
So
don't know. I don't know if you have the other button where it's like a tone.
mhm,
So they call it the Pavlovian
yes,
button, where it's a tone, and if you hold the button for more than like 2.5 seconds, it also delivers a little buzz. So the dog can associate the tone with the buzz, and that at some point you just really have
all
to
you need
quickly
is the
click
tone.
that button to do the tone because
And
they know.
and some of the shock collars are like that too, right? Like it has a beep and then
Mm-hmm.
it has a shock. So if you teach them that, like, hey, like, listen to the beep, because if you don't listen to the beep, then the shock's coming. It's the same, yeah,
Yeah.
sort of thing. And then eventually they know, once they hear that beep, oh, she means business. Okay, I better listen up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was just kind of walking around.
Yeah. And how did
And
he
then the next
react?
day I did it again
Yeah.
while he was lying down, and 10 was pretty much like his intensity level. And he would just kind of like look to the side, like as if something kind of tickled him.
Yes.
Kind of like, was there like a hand right there, like tickling the
Yeah.
side of my neck or something?
Yeah.
Like it surprised him, like, ooh, what is that?
See, I can, so when I tried to use it on Gibbs and I wanted to test and see what his start, like, working like level would be, same thing, I put it on him. He went and he was laying down and he was having a nap, and I was sitting on the couch and I like waited for him to like close his eyes, and then I started on it. So again, I'm slowly dialing it up, and I started at like 4, went to like 5, went to 6, went to 7, and I mean like nothing. Like he's just lying there, because I remember Michelle saying to me, "You're looking for the least bit of like response. It could be an ear twitch, it could be
Mm-hmm.
like a, you know how they sometimes like,
Yeah.
and like anything, like a little twitch of the neck, or a little, like, sometimes they like turn their head, like as if like, yeah, what was that?
Yeah.
What the heck, like what was that? And sometimes it's just like a flit of the ear, like, you know how their ears move sometimes, like
Mm-hmm.
when a mosquito lands on it, sometimes it's that, sometimes it's like a quick lift of the lip, like you're looking for any kind of reaction. So I'm literally sitting there going up to 6 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 10, 11, and Becky's like indoor working level was like at around like between 10 and 12, and then when we went outside she was like a 20 to 25.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm like up to 12, not like, I'm talking nothing, not an ear twitch, like
And
nothing.
he has like short
And
hair.
yeah, exactly, he has short hair. So,
Yeah.
and same thing, I had the same experience with you, where now I'm up to 15 and 16, and I can see it contracting on his neck. And I was like, what the hell? Like, why is he not? So I find the like very beginning of like, to find your working level, I find it very confusing because it's very subtle, and you almost need someone with experience to sort of help you out with it. I think, like, in like just in the very beginning, once you figure out what their working levels are, then the rest of it comes along like a lot easier, because it's the same thing as like leash training, like I said, or any other exercises that you do for training your dog. But I found it really difficult, like in the beginning, to find, okay, what is my range here? And
Yeah.
then but anyways, so continue. So once, so have you been using it?
I've been using it.
Hmm.
So even today, like I put it on and I was like, just because like Ralph is so hairy, I think
Yeah.
every time I put it on, I kind of have to make sure like his working level is still 10.
Yeah.
So he was good at 10 indoors. So what I've been doing with him is the sitting. So I'm using commands he already knows.
Yes. Which is
So
recommended, by the way, in e-collar training. So
yeah, just so that they know
what it is
what
you
you're
want them to
asking of
do.
them.
Yes, exactly.
So I began with the e-collar on, the slip lead on, and I would just walk around like in a circle in my living room. And then I'd stop and I'd say, Ralph, sit, a bit of leash pressure, continuous stimulation. And as soon as his butt hit the ground, I would release both.
Yeah.
And then I'd just keep doing that.
Yeah.
And then in the house, like Ralph's recall is very, very good. So he'd be looking outside the window. and I'd be saying, Ralph, come. And as soon as he would look at me,
Mhm.
well, I would say, Ralph, come, stimulate. As soon as he looked at me and was coming my way, I would release it. And then I'd
Mhm.
encourage him to come to me.
Yeah.
Like, good boy, come on.
Yeah.
And then today I went for a walk with Ralph. So
Mhm.
I started inside again. I did a few circles in the living room just to get him started.
Mhm.
And then I went outside in front of the house in the street. I did some circles there
Mhm.
and like some quick changes in direction.
Yeah.
So I would walk straight and then all of a sudden I would turn around.
Mhm.
And if Ralph didn't follow, I would stimulate, pull on the slip lead. And then as soon as he would start coming my way, I would release it.
And but are you giving a command word to go along with that? Uh like come or follow
Yeah.
or heal
Yeah.
or
I
yeah?
say, like, come
Okay.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And then I would stop, sit. And then my word from like, my release word is usually free if he's just like in the house
Yeah.
sitting. But on a walk, like if I stop at a corner,
Mhm.
I say, let's go.
Okay.
And then he gets up and he starts walking.
Yeah.
And then I started walking on the street, and he was so good until he met a dog.
See, huge distraction. So you have to like work your way up. And it's interesting because Michelle had taken Becky for like a week when she did her e-collar training. And Becky was like, well, both of my dogs, and they still are like squirrel obsessed, right? Like the least, like
Mm.
like if you even say the word squirrel, they run to the back door and to like look outside. And they used to be like, if you had them on leash, like lunging like with off on the leash at squirrels and stuff. And Michelle was really great, and like most trainers do, they take videos and they send them to you. They use them for their own like social media and companies and whatever they're doing, but also to show the owner like what they're doing with their dog and how the training's coming along. And literally like Michelle was sitting there and there was a squirrel literally like walking around minding like I'm talking 4 feet away from Becky, and she was just sitting there watching it, and I was like,
Wow.
what?
How did she do that?
I know. And like within a week too, right? But like she's like a full-time dog trainer, so like
Mm-hmm.
you have the time to put into it, it's definitely like worth it. Like if you have a week off and you just like train every day, like in short spurts, like but multiple times or whatever, you can really bring your e-collar training along nicely.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole idea behind the training is, again, you get them used to the collar, you find out what your indoor working, like as soon as you see them react to it, then it's like, okay, so just like you would with, like Vero mentioned, with the slip lead or a prong collar or whatever you're using previously, you start with the commands that they already know. So with Becky, it was like, sit, lay down, um, place.
Mm-hmm.
So they go to place. And so you would say, Becky, place. And then you would start the stimulation. And as soon as she gets to place and lays down the way you want her to, then the stimulation comes off, good girl. And you start working inside only because that's where the least amount of distractions are. And once they start executing each thing like flawlessly, like without waiting around, and if they're not listening to you, and this is again where it can get confusing and it can be hard knowing whether the prongs are in the right place, so you always have to make sure you have good contact and whether it's like actually working or not. Because if you say, let's say Becky plays and she doesn't do it, then you would turn it up and say like, Becky plays, and then you, like if she still doesn't go, then you could turn up and say Becky no, and then deliver it again. Or
Mm-hmm.
you have to sort of increase your levels if they're not listening, right? And that can be a
Yeah.
little bit tricky because you're trying to get used to the remote control and how it works and dialing it up slowly and pushing the button, and shit, did I push the right button? And it's getting the timing of
And
everything
the
too.
dial is sensitive.
Yes, it's very,
So
very sensitive.
sensitive.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, when you're doing some training outside in the winter, it's really difficult. I had like my mittens on. It's cold.
I didn't
So
even think of that.
I'm like, Ralph, sit, good boy. And then I gave him like some treats sometimes. So I would
Yeah.
take off my mitten, give him
Yeah.
a treat, put
Yeah.
it back on, adjust the remote in my hand with my mitten
Yeah.
on, make
Yeah.
sure like I had one finger on the like continuous and then the other finger on the momentary
Yeah.
button.
Yeah.
And then
It's
I'd be
almost
like, Okay, let's go.
Yeah, it's like almost like you need like a super tight fitting glove or whatever where you can like have a little bit more dexterity. I didn't even think of that, but yeah, it would be a challenge in the winter for sure.
Yeah. And even I find like even holding a leash with your mittens on, like it's just hard doing like the little pop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So once again, once they're executing everything like flawlessly indoors, they're listening to you, everything's great. Now you take it outside. But now like we've mentioned so many times when talking about training with dogs, the second you leave like your front door, there's distractions. The wind's blowing. There's a squirrel over there across the street. Somebody is
There's
walking your dog.
smells.
A car is driving by. Some kid goes by on a skateboard. There's like the smells and everything. So now they're overloaded and that indoor working level is no longer valid.
Mhm.
It might be, so you can start out by trying depending on like how conscientious your dog is to you, but you need to go outside and now sort of not start from scratch, but if they're not listening to you and executing it, then you need to dial it up to the point where where you can see, oh crap, yes, that uncomfortable feeling, I better listen to her. And that's
Yeah.
what it is. It's almost like a tap on the shoulder, like, hey, I'm talking to you, remember?
Yeah.
Remember, you have to listen to me. So, like, they could be off in the field, and like, and my command for Becky was Becky here. And that meant you get back here and you sit right down, right next to me. And and again, you just start training like you would any other way, like Veros mentioned, with a couple little treats or whatever, positive reinforcement when you get them like in the position that you want for whatever your command
Mhm.
is. And then once and you start over again like you did inside, so you take them outside and now you start sit with the commands that they know. If they know heel when you're walking with them on the leash, you keep them in a heel. Good dog. You can give a quick treat if you have the dexterity with the remote and the mittens and the treats and the
Yep.
everything in your hand. That's why it's almost like it's funny, you can tell like when somebody's a trainer or not, because they like Michelle walks around literally with a tool belt, so she's got like a pocket with a couple of treats in it, she's got like all these clips and for her, you know, her poo bags and her e-collar remote and her like water bottle and like this and that sort of thing. And it's almost like kind of what you need when you're training a little bit. But you can start like in a backyard where there's not as many, like if you have a backyard, as many distractions, or like go to a park where there's not as
Yeah.
many people around. Because if you start off with like an overload, like you can't take them to like downtown New York and be like, all right, let's start our outdoor
Let's
e-collar
do our training.
training. Yeah.
Well,
Unless
just
they're
like today, like when we met that dog, like he was doing so well, and then he met that dog, and
and
I had to I dialed mine up to 14.
yeah,
I don't know if that was enough.
yeah,
I know when I did it, like he would do the like the back paw, like trying to scratch his neck. So I think he would feel
yes.
it.
Oh yeah. That's
Yeah,
definitely
he
like
was like
they do
hopping
that a
on one
lot.
foot.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you are giving that continuous stimulation, and it's like an itch, and they're like, ah, they're like, get it off, and they like itch at it,
Got
like
it itchy.
they're like, okay, fine, I'll come and sit next to you, like, then you're like, good, but then they learn, right? Like that's like part
Hmm.
of like working towards like the obedience and the recall or the whatever it is you need them to do with you. So you know, another thing that I'll say really quickly about tools like this is that, you know, I think when people buy their dogs, they, and especially when they see other people with obedient dogs, they just think that like this naturally happens. Like some people can think that, like, oh, you just have a good dog or a bad dog, and that's the way it is. But it's not. It's a lot of work training your dogs. And one thing that I had a hard time with is that, like, I felt like using some of these tools was like a failure, like on my part.
Yeah.
You know, like I didn't want the prong collar forgiven. And I remember saying that to Michelle when I was working with her, even just with leash training in the beginning, because my dogs would literally pull your arm out of your socket, like just walking them across the street or around the block or whatever. Is if I work with a prong collar, is that working towards eventually not needing the prong collar anymore? And it's not. it's a tool that you need to use because that's the way your dog is,
Mhm.
unless
Yep.
you start, because Gibbon, I started from a puppy and I used the slip lead and tried to get him to do it, but like because of our lifestyle and what we do with our dogs, and because we let them off leash, and that, like at the cottage, at the dog park, whatever, I need a prong collar when I'm walking him on leash. I just do, because he's a puller, and
Yeah.
we don't do enough leash walking for him to adjust to walking with just a regular leash. But some dogs do really well with that. Again, and people do
Mhm.
leash training with, like, in the beginning, and it just works out so that you can just lax leash, like walk your dog, and it's great. But other dogs, like depending on the personality, and again, depending on your lifestyle, you need to use these tools. And with Becky, like, again, I really liked the e-collar, and I liked it more than the prong, I find.
Yeah.
And because you can give them that a little bit more freedom. So Becky loved running, and like I said, at the cottage she would take off for like hours into our back property where you had no idea where she is. If she ran into a moose or a bear and like never came back, we would never know what happened to her. And nobody wants that, like, to happen to your dog.
No.
Right. So, what I really liked about the e-collar, and again, when you're choosing your model, like really read the description of what each model does for you, because some of them have a range of a longer distance. So, again, like I think a lot of people use these for hunting, or like, and stuff like
Mhm.
this, to help train their dogs for those purposes and stuff like that. So, you want to look at the distance that you want with your e-collar, and again, just like the reasons why you're wanting it. And for Gibbon, I can let him off leash. His recall isn't perfect, I can tell you that right now. To be honest with you, it's not perfect, but at least he's in eyesight where I can see him. And he's close enough that if I walk close enough to him, he's like, I get close enough, and then he's like, oh yeah, okay, mom's talking to me, I better get back. So um
Yeah.
do I have to chase him every once in a while? A little bit. Like I said, we're not perfect. But with Becky, it was like she was out of sight. You had no idea where she was. And I didn't like that. And my dad, like, as I've mentioned many times on the show, wasn't willing to work with the training and the recall and that sort of thing. He's like, dogs just need to run. They just need to run. I'm like, yeah, they do, but they need to run when you want them to run, and when it's appropriate to run, and where you can see them, so that you're a responsible dog owner. And that was my thing with Becky. So what I liked is that, like, now at the dog park, I wasn't running around chasing her and not knowing where she was and who she's interacting with. Now she can still run ahead, but when I say Becky here, even when I say her name, she turns around and is listening to me. Like,
Mm.
oh, okay, I better
Yeah.
not. I better listen to mom. I better not go too much further. And I that's what I really like about the e-collar. And again, if that's my personal reason, but it's so versatile that for whatever you want to do with your dog, you it's a really nice tool to use, and it's
Yeah.
expensive, but the company is one of those companies that honors their product. Like if your leash breaks, if the collar breaks or snaps, or if you find it's not working, or if the battery starts dying really quick, you literally email them and they replace everything for you. Like they're one of those super great companies. So
Good.
you're buying an expensive product, but it's a quality product that's going to last you and that the company stands by. So I've got nothing but great things to say about the e-collar if you're thinking about one.
Hmm.
What are your plans to do with Ralph at the e-collar? Just more obedience?
More obedience, his recall,
Mm-hmm.
and his leash walking.
Mm.
That's a big one for me because I like walking.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes the walks are pleasant and sometimes they're not. I never know what I'm going to get.
Yeah, so it's nice to have that consistency, right?
Mhm.
Where you are in control of your dog, and it's predictable, and you know how to control his environment and what you're comfortable with your dog. So, yes.
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 Guess who had a bath today?
Who? You?
A stank. Ralph had a bath today. We took him to Pet Value
Mm-hmm.
And we scrub the little pooper.
Yeah. I've never been to the
I kept
Pet Value
saying like
bath.
he's a shade lighter than when when he went in there.
And a few pounds lighter.
It's actually really well done. There's the bath area, like it's pretty big. They have a little leash on the wall that you tie your dog with so that they can't like jump out of the bath. It's waist level, so good working level for us humans. They have the nozzle
Do
spray.
you have to lift your dog into it? Like, is it like a full on tub?
No, so well, it looks like it, but
Hmm.
there's steps for the dog,
Okay.
and then they can jump into it. Now we did have to like Ralph went up the steps, but would not jump into it,
Yeah.
so we still had to lift him and put him in.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there's a handle, there's a leash. You tie your dog to it so they don't jump out. Nozzle spray. They have the like the air dryer.
Hmm.
It's not super powerful, and I don't know if they can't because there would just be hair everywhere in the
Yeah.
store.
Yeah. Oh, is it in the store?
It's in the store, like it's right at the
Oh,
back, like open to
wow.
everything else. Yeah.
Really? Oh, yeah. No
Yeah.
wonder. Huh.
I thought it was going to be like a glass area,
Yeah,
like
exactly. Like a room
separated.
that's
Yeah.
closed off, like from everything else. See, I've never seen
Mhm.
it. I've heard of it from different people. I remember my mom telling me about it when a new Pet Value opened up in her neighborhood, but I never actually saw like the bath stall area. Um,
Mhm.
so in terms of like shampoo and stuff, do they provide it or?
They provide it. We brought our own, but they do provide it.
Oh, okay.
And some nice towels.
And what do they charge? What did they charge for using the bathroom stall?
I think it's $10.
Oh, okay. That's not bad. Yeah.
And then I think you can be a member, and after 6 you get a free one.
Oh, noise.
Yeah.
Noise. So did it work?
Nice.
So my question is because I find like when I have bathed my dog here, even in my own house, like again with the various skunkings we've had and such filthy dog adventures, is I find you need a really good water pressure, especially with fur, right? To like get the
Yeah,
soap
it
out
was
and stuff.
good.
Yeah, good water pressure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And there
It,
was this other dog
mm-hmm,
getting a little scrubbing.
mm-hmm.
She was so cute.
Yeah.
It
What
was like
kind?
a little Australian Shepherd slash Border Collie mix.
Oh, cute. Super
And the owner
cute.
was like, "Who's a good girl? Who's a good girl? Who's a good girl?" Like the whole time.
That's awesome. And how did like Ralph react? Did he try to jump out? Was he like freaking out or was he pretty good with the baths?
He's pretty good with the water part.
Hmm.
He does not like the blow dryer part.
Yeah, I remember when we took Scraps to PetSmart for his first grooming, like they give you a little report card. They used to give you a little report card afterwards of like how they did. And they're like, oh, he's such a sweet dog. He was such a good boy. Does not like the dryer.
See, Wiggum. Ooh, Wiggum.
Ooh.
Ralph tries to bite the air. Like he freaks out. Like the back of him isn't so bad. Like he doesn't mind as much. But as soon as you get like to his neck,
Yeah.
he's just like nom 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 nom.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
funny.
So you have to like hold him or give him like a bunch of treats. We usually do it. So I have an air dryer at home,
Hmm.
like a forced air dryer, and
Yeah.
it's so powerful
Oh, yeah.
that when we do it outside, first of all, because hair everywhere.
Yep.
But we have to give him like peanut butter the whole time.
So, what kind of air dryer is this? Is it like a leaf
Ooh,
blower?
it's like a leaf blow. Well, it's not the same size, but it's very powerful.
Oh my good. Where did you get this from?
I ordered it on Amazon, I think.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
See, I just used a hair dryer with Becky, but it would take forever.
Oh,
And yes,
because it's not
the
supposed to be warm.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't want to heat them up too much. Like I wouldn't hold it
Hmm.
right up close to her. I would go from like far away. But the good thing about having a short-haired dog is they dry like super fast. It's awesome.
Hmm.
You can pretty much towel them down and they're pretty much good to go. But like literally like 15 minutes, 20 minutes tops, no air drying at all. Like they're pretty
Oh
much
my
dry.
God.
Yeah, which is amazing. That's a good thing about a short hair.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well, that's fun and exciting.
Yeah, he's all floofy now.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Does he did he walk out with like a skip in his step? Like, did he get the zoomies?
we we carried him out because it was so dirty today, and I was like, "You're gonna be clean for at least 5 minutes."
Oh my God, I love
Yeah,
it.
the parking lot was super dirty, and I was like, "Nope."
Nope. I love it. I love it. All right.
Okay,
Well,
that's a wrap.
that's a wrap.
Tune in next week on Let's Boop Snoots.
Boop.
Boop.